What's up, dads? Your boy Big Dave, back with another episode of Culture Dad's Age of Sword and Cassette. Today we're going to talk about something really cool, a dope movie series that you guys everybody's going to be familiar with. We're going to talk about the Terminator. But Mr. Mike, what's going on, bub?
Yeah, I'm doing all right here. It's been a long time, super long time since I've seen T2. And I've never seen the Terminator, so that was kind of a cool thing.
You never saw the first Terminator?
I never saw the first one. Somehow.
I bet that was a treat. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So let's a quick overview for maybe people that haven't seen the Terminator. It's an 80s movie. It came out in when did it come out here? I got my thing.
First one's 1984.
1984 came out in 1984, directed by James Cameron. Right, it was I believe it was his first movie ever. It was Arnold Schwarzenegger. It was one of his first movies. It was he did this movie immediately after he did Conan the Barbarian. So this is like the time that Conan is on the come up, right? Or I mean, Arnold is on the come up. So it was a movie. It was technically a B movie, because it only cost $5 million. And in the terms of Hollywood movies, $5 million is spit in the bucket, right? I believe the next one, Terminator 2, was $150 million or something ridiculous like that. But the original Terminator cost like $5 million, and it was a big deal. So before we really go into that, James Cameron, a lot of people don't know, James Cameron comes out of, he's kind of a predecessor of a filmmaker whose name was Roger Corman. And for those of you guys that aren't familiar with Roger Corman, he was the king of the B movie. I believe his company was called like New World Cinema or something like that. He was king of the B movie. This guy was the kind of guy that would make a movie for 50 grand and turn around and like make 20 million off of it. He did all these cheesy, sometimes sleazy horror flicks and sci-fi movies. He did Battle Beyond the Stars. He did Forbidden World. He did what was that? Something Terror, some planet. I can't remember it. There's a scene in it where a like gigantic like caterpillar alien like rapes a girl. So it's like there's some pretty weird stuff. Then he also did like Humanoids from the Deep, like just the quintessential cheesy low budget B 80s movies. They got like the hot babes that like there's the scenes where like they get caught by the monster and their tits are popped out and like this kind of stuff, right? Roger Corman was the king of these movies, and I'm a big fan of Roger Corman's. But what's unique about Roger Corman is a lot of big filmmakers came out of his camp. James Cameron, I believe Ridley Scott, Martin Scorsese, a lot of big names came out of his camp, guys that were under his tutelage. And what they learned from Roger Corman is how to be really efficient with budgets, right? To get a lot out of your budgets by filming faster, by making sets that are like saving money on sets. Roger Corman, for his movie, for all of his movies, actually, he would reuse animatronics and just reskin them. He would reuse everything, right? And he would actually build sets out of trash. If you go watch the movie Forbidden World, that entire spaceship is made out of trash. They would go dumpster dive in the night and go find like old Big Mac containers, which were styrofoam at this time in the 80s or 70s or whenever it came out, and they would paint them. You find these like grills or whatever that for like vents, they would cut milk crates and spray paint them silver. Like they would literally build this entire spaceship, like practical set out of trash. So this is the school that James Cameron comes out of, like utilizing stuff, saving money on sets, making like being creative and resourceful, like relying on different creative camera angles. Using Roger Corman is a big fan. He was a big fan of what is called physical acting, right? Like conveying a lot without having any dialogue, because if you have a little bit of money, you can't really hire big name celebrities to act in your films. So like B-list actors aren't really going to be good at dialogue, right? So he would try to make them talk as little as possible and just like have a lot of scenes where there's body language and people walking and facial expressions and stuff like that. So this is where James Cameron comes out of. And there's actually quite a few instances where you can see where James Cameron uses the techniques from Roger Corman films, right? So the Terminator, the first Terminator movie, which came out in 1984, $5 million, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and a couple other people that later got famous. It was actually originally the Terminator was going to be played by the guy, I can't remember his name, the guy that plays the cop, the white guy, the white cop. He was originally going to be the Terminator, but Arnold Schwarzenegger just like pulled up, and Cameron originally thought that he wanted to play the hero, Kyle Reese, but Arnold's like, nah, I want to be the bad guy. Which he's like, all right, Arnold's here. We got to give him whatever he wants. But it's now looking back, it's hard to imagine anybody else in that role, right? So Terminator, it's literally based off of James Cameron I guess he was on vacation in Rome or something, and he got immensely sick, like real sick. And he had like days of like these bizarre fever dreams. And in one of his dreams, he just saw this like robot, like an android, like he described as a metallic skeleton rising from fire. And it was the image, this archetype of this like robot coming from the fire, like really was freaky to him and really impressed him. So he just like woke up in the middle of the night and sketched it out. And then he just like built the movie off of that. So it's literally from a weird fever dream. So Terminator 1984, Mr. Mike, before I keep going on and on and on, what was your impressions of it first time seeing it?
I thought it was really good. It holds up. I mean, it's of its time. Nobody's going to mistake it for a film that was made in the 70s or the 90s or anything like that. It's definitely stamped with its birth date, basically. But that works really very much in its favor. That was, the 80s is a time where all kinds of things were getting to be kind of like synthetic. Like music was starting to become very synthesized, literally using synthesizers. And even like music production was starting to get a lot more, sterile and taking a lot of the human elements out of the performances and things like that. Like with things like drum sampling and all kinds of stuff. And it just seemed like there was something going on at that time that was really sort of primed, like, for a sci-fi kind of world. I'm not sure. I don't know the timeline exactly, but I think Blade Runner was like around this time, like 1985 maybe or something. There was an Alien that was a bit earlier. That was like 1979, I believe. But yeah, in the first half of the 80s, like very late 70s, early 80s, you had a kind of zeitgeist that was like ripe for something like Terminator, and so it fits very, very well in its time. And of course, the soundtrack is very synthesized and synthetic sounding, very 80s with all these like lush synthesizers and like weird sounding kind of like machine like samples and things like that. And I mean, some of it is a little bit dated. Like if you look at the what is it?
Stop motion.
Yeah, the stop motion. It's a little bit jerky and everything. Like it kind of works though, because it's meant to be a machine, right? It's meant to be a little bit uncanny and everything like that. But yeah, overall, the film was really cool, and it does have that sort of like gritty early 80s vibe that, as I said before, of like things like Alien and Aliens and whatnot. And I mean, there's a lot that can be said about. We'll unpack it, but overall, my impression was like it was really cool. It was a little bit different than I kind of expected, because Terminator 2 was like I mean, I saw it when it came out, and it was like, I was not quite a teenager when it came out, but like, it really made an impression on everybody. It was like everybody's favorite movie instantly when it came out, and it's still awesome, and we'll talk about that too. But Terminator 2 is kind of like, it's this like crazy sci-fi over the top action movie with like all this cool stuff and like really well done, and like very, very good effects and everything like that, but it's kind of an action movie. Terminator 1, or the Terminator, whatever it's called, it is an action movie. There's a lot of action scenes and everything like that, but you kind of get the vibe of it's almost like a horror movie in some ways. So it's kind of like Terminator 1 is this grittier, like slower paced and more brooding sci-fi horror flick. Terminator 2 is kind of more like this like blockbuster Indiana Jones sci-fi action flick. So they're a little bit different. The thing I noticed about like watching them is that they had a kind of a different feel. They're clearly like of a piece. Obviously, the stories interconnect thematically and even aesthetically. They're quite similar, but there is some differences as well. And I was struck by the differences, actually.
Yeah. If you're absolutely correct. The Terminator is a sci-fi horror thriller. It is an action movie, and it is very, as you mentioned, it is very much of its time. This was during this time in the 80s, like you mentioned, you get Alien, you get The Thing, you get Terminator, you get Blade Runner, you get all of these kinds of movies, and they're all very horror adjacent, which in my opinion, the best horror sci-fi is horror adjacent, because it implements really mind-bending kind of ideas. Really it employs high weirdness, right? And that's what makes really astounding sci-fi. So you watch the Terminator, it has vibes of something like Halloween or the Exorcist, right? It's got that foggy blue background. The color palette has that pale blue. It looks like a John Carpenter film. It has that vibe. It has the music with the synths, right? The gang 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 gang. You know what I mean? So it's like total 80s. But what is like really cool about the first one is it is like the pacing is just brilliant with this, right? It's not Terminator 2, as you mentioned, is gigantic block, but it's almost a completely different genre of movie, which I love both. But the first one, it's like it never stops. It's over before it kind of like pulls you into the story. It's almost like paced like a short story. It pulls you in immediately. There's not a whole lot of like the Terminator itself doesn't really have a character arc. It like doesn't really reveal too much about it. He's kind of got this little bit of mystery behind him. I mean, explains where it comes from and his purpose and everything like that. But outside of like what he is, it doesn't really go in anything else. I think he has a total of like 8 lines in the whole movie where he just says a few words. He's very much a physical actor, right? And Schwarzenegger just kills it, right? People really do not give Arnold the credit that he deserves as actually an actor. The guy is fantastic, but it has that vibe, that horror movie vibe. I'm being chased, the weird synth music, the like thrilling scenes, everything. Every scene is you're on the edge of your seat. It's this really just adrenaline fueled thrill. Even today, as Mike said, like there's some scenes where it has a stop motion and it looks a little jerky and it looks a little bit cheesy today, but you could it's still like you're still excited the whole time. It's an exciting, thrilling, well-paced, awesome movie. A couple of the parts in dialogue, some of the dialogue comes off a little bit ham-fisted, but it's part of the charm, right? The Terminator is a fantastic movie.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of echoing what you were saying there about Arnold being very good in this role. I think he's perfectly cast for it too, because it's kind of, there's only so many things that a an Austrian bodybuilder with a thick accent and kind of an odd look to him can do. And that is one of the things that he can do, is come off a little bit like a robot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He has this, like, I think one of the things that like made Schwarzenegger successful is that he was very good at choosing roles, like that, you know, picking the right roles for himself, right? Because he's never going to be like, he's not going to fit into a Jane Austen like adaptation or Shakespearean thing or something like that, right? But what he is going to fit in as is, like in Conan, he makes a very good barbarian because he sounds like a barbarian, right? He kind of sounds like, you know, he obviously has got some sort of foreign accent. He looks like a heathen. He sounds like one. He just kind of comes off that way, right? Like he's perfect. Like somebody else that was like, you know, speaks perfect English and whatever might not have been as good in that role. So that was a good choice for him. The Terminator is another good choice because, of course, he does have that sort of like choppy robotic delivery with his accent and everything like that. So that really works in his favor. I think that's really cool. You also mentioned about the pacing of the movie, which I thought was really good. Yeah, I agreed. I agree with you, and I definitely like was picking up on that as I was watching the movie. One of the things that kind of like came to mind a little bit, and this is going to be a bit of a left curve here, I think, is Friday the 13th with Jason. Now this is not as good of a series of movies as the Terminator series, but one of the things that you get in that movie, or in the movies, in the Friday the 13th movies, is that Jason never runs after his victims, right? He's always just like walks after them, and this gives you a sort of, it's very weird because like his quarry is like running away and he's just like walking quickly, but just walking after them. And you get this sort of sense of inevitability. Like it doesn't matter how fast you run, doesn't matter what you do, he will eventually catch up to you. And you kind of get this feeling with the Terminator, with the Terminator himself in the movies, Arnold, or in the first movie, where you definitely get this feeling that he's coming, and you can run, but you can't hide, and you can only run for so long because he will eventually get there. He will eventually get you, and he's just sort of like steadily coming after you, and it just like, it does have this kind of like robotic feel to it, this sort of like automaton that just like moves almost like of itself. And you get that feeling, the sense of inevitability, almost like a fatalism, where it doesn't matter what you do, he will eventually catch up to you. So I thought that was really cool, and the movie did that very well. It's sort of like you get this sense of doom, almost the sense that that it's just moving towards a conclusion at all times. Like everything is sort of pushing the action forward. And it's hard to put your finger on exactly why, but that definitely comes through in that movie. Like you just kind of feel an anxiety as you watch. You're like, he's coming kind of thing. You didn't get that so much in the second movie, but this was something that I thought that the first movie did very right.
Yeah. And you mentioned Doom, and we'll come back to that because I think that's a really important thing as far as one of my deeper takes on the nature of the story of the first Terminator. Like Michael Myers. The Terminator is not too far removed from Michael Myers. You know what I mean? In fact, you could, like, if you played the movies, like it's like Michael Myers is slow moving. It's the blue, weird, it's all shot at night. You got the blue lighting and blue color palettes. He wears a mask. He wears the white mask, completely emotionless, completely you don't even want to say a sociopath. He is murder incarnate. You know what I mean? He's murder manifested. So he just slowly walks. There's nothing you could do to get away from him. He will find you. And what this invokes, and what Terminator invokes, is what I would just call fear, right? If you look at the kind of the four elements of horror, fear is one of them. And fear does not necessarily just mean being scared. Fear is a very primordial feeling. Fear is the reaction you get when you're in danger. And this is something that goes back to when human beings were not top of the food chain. This is a feeling that we invoke. This is why we like it so much, because it's completely obsolete in modern society. Unless you live in bumfuck rural Alaska where there's grizzly bears, or if you're in the jungle, or if you live in a hut on the Nile or something like that where there's creatures that are going to eat you.
Or if you live in Australia.
Or you live in Australia with those saltwater crocs and great white sharks and all that bullshit you guys got. But unless you live somewhere like that, which the overwhelming majority of people have no thought of this, right? We are all protected by modernity, right? We don't understand this idea of there could at anywhere be something that's looking to eat us. We are not on the food chain anymore. We have transcended the food chain. So we still have that fear, right? We still have that instinct that's still boiled into us. We still have those ancestral memories. And for some reason, we love watching these movies where these like the Terminator and Michael Myers, et cetera, where they kind of act as a stand-in for predators that hunt us as prey, and for us to get that feeling of fear, of being hunted, of being chased by something that is physically superior to us, right? So it's you're watching this and it invokes these kind of primordial feelings, seeing these guys hunt people as they run and flee and try to escape, but they're just inferior beings. And there's a bunch of other things to unpack with it too, but I'll let you go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. The whole what it is that horror is doing for us is a very interesting question. It may be a little tangential to this because it's sci-fi horror. This is not exactly straight up just horror genre or whatever, but it's worth asking the question, what exactly, why do we like horror? Because we shouldn't. We don't like to be scared. We don't like to fear for our lives. Why is the simulation of this something that we enjoy? You know what I mean? We don't really enjoy the simulation of pain. Why would we enjoy the simulation of fear and terror? It's kind of interesting. It must be doing something for us. I'm not sure that I have a full answer to it, except for to say, and this is something that we could maybe go into depth in another episode sometime. I think that what horror is doing for us, basically what horror is it's a replacement or an evolution perhaps of what ancient tragedy was doing for us. Which is to make us feel these feelings that are somewhat uncomfortable, looking reality in the face as something that is actually ugly, but that needs to be reckoned with. So, I mean, without going into a huge amount of depth on that, there's definitely when you watch a good horror movie and you're actually genuinely freaked out by it, you do have a kind of purging of emotions. You do have a kind of catharsis, in the same way that if you eat a really spicy food, you kind of feel yourself purged of something, you've sweated it out or whatever. When you get done watching a really scary horror flick, you kind of get something similar. You kind of feel like something has been purged. Anyway, Terminator is not a terrifying movie in the same way that The Exorcist is necessarily, but you do definitely get these elements that are present in the Terminator that are in Terminator 1, whereas Terminator 2 not really at all. Actually, it's kind of lightened with humor and it's got some pathos in it and things like that. But the first movie is just pretty much darkness all the way through. It's not uncompromisingly dark, the darkest film you've ever seen or whatever, but those elements are definitely there. And it does have that sort of purging aspect to it. So yeah. And it's interesting. There's some other interesting things about it too that we could talk about. It's set in a kind of more high trust world in some ways. I mean, it's supposed to be gritty and it's supposed to be, everything in that time period was sort of like trying to get away from, like the hippie world, basically, like was well and truly in the rearview mirror. The optimism of the 60s gave way to some of the realism of the 70s, and then became somewhat cynical in the 80s. But still, you can, like, some aspects of a more innocent world kind of peek through a little bit. Like, something stuck out to me. It's just because it's so far away from what we live in today, where in, like, one of the plot points at the beginning of the Terminator is that he's just looking through the phone book, and he's just like finding like the different Sarah Connors in the phone book and just like looking them up and being like, well, that's their address, and I'll go there and I'll just kill them or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
It's like, today, I mean, you would not be able to do that by any stretch, right? Like, the idea of like that every person's address is published in the phone book or name, even, like, because when I was a kid, it was like we had phone directories like that, and it had people's like name and phone number. Like, you could look up my name and phone number in there, and then through not very much know-how, you'd be able to find where I live, because you could just do like a reverse lookup or something like that. We don't live in that world anymore. We live in a much lower trust world, and in some ways it's kind of like the well, maybe not the promise of Terminator, because that's so like apocalyptic, but like the promise of that world of the 80s, where the future is not something to look forward to. The future is something a little bit scary and dark and menacing, has kind of come to pass. So it's kind of interesting, because you get this same feeling when you watch a lot of like old sci-fi, and I'm talking real old, or like read old sci-fi, where you get like the vision of what the future is going to look like through the lens of the past, right? You still have some of the past sort of coloring that view, and you kind of get that in Terminator, where it's kind of like extended a bit of like what's there, what exists in 1984, but it's still a little bit more innocent than like the actual world that it depicts. Because I think a lot of Terminator, the plot in the Terminator movies is now in the past, right? Yeah. A lot of the like World War III stuff is like began in like 2021 or something, right? Anyway, I just thought it was interesting how it's like it's another example of like old sci-fi. It really holds up, but it still kind of like has that like retro-futurism where you can kind of like see the retro aspects of it too.
Yeah. Like I said before, in my opinion, there's a reason that these films, The Terminator, The Thing, Blade Runner, Alien, why Predator, why these movies hold up so well, and a lot of other ones don't. Like Star Trek does not hold up the same way. It just doesn't hold up the same way. The reason is because, like I mentioned, these things are horror adjacent. They're horror adjacent, as Mike just mentioned. True sci-fi is not progressive sci-fi like Star Trek or whatever, where it's and I don't even consider Star Wars to be sci-fi. Star Wars is like fantasy, right? There's magic, there's knights, there's blah blah blah. But when you talk about true sci-fi, it is horror adjacent, and it has an air of Luddism to it. All old sci-fi, true sci-fi, is not, oh, well, we're in the future and we're, talking to different and technology has solved all of our problems, et cetera, et cetera. This idea, like progressive sci-fi, was introduced by Isaac Asimov very early on and got picked up on and then popularized by Star Trek. And to me, it's like gay. It's not real sci-fi. You go read the old sci-fi pulps. It's about mad science. It's about terrifying weird futures. It's about horrible aliens from outer space murdering people and genociding people. It's about us developing technology that completely destroys it like leads us down a dark path. And this is why cyberpunk is like the rightful heir of old sci-fi, and why cyberpunk is so popular, because it maintains a lot of that stuff. So if you look at the Terminator, it has the elements of horror. The 4 elements of horror are fear, disgust, high weirdness, and the uncanny. This is, of my invention, but this is how I define it. Fear, the thing, the Terminator chases you. Disgust, he's bleeding from his face. The high weirdness, he's from the future, right? The uncanny, he's not really human, and as the time goes on, his eyebrows get blown off, and he looks kind of human, but he's kind of not, and he moves real weird, talks weird, has all of these elements to it. But it also, as Mike mentioned, another thing I would mention, it's uncanny in another way that is unintended, which is a lot of these 80s movies is like when he's looking up in the phone book. To us today, that is kind of jarring. That back in times, you could just look somebody up. You know what I mean? We're not used to that these days. So you're like, why are you in the phone book? Why'd you let yourself get put in the phone book? But if you go back, I remember being a kid, and like back at those times, if you opted to be not in the phone book, you were like a weirdo. It's like, what are you hiding, bro? What's you know what I mean? So all of these things tied together gives this uncanny feeling and makes it horror adjacent. And it is a warning of technology, right? The whole movie, in my summation, is about doom or fate. The Terminator himself is fate, right? He is like the messenger. Well, actually, that's a trope that comes from I believe the trope is called the signalman, right? The signalman is an old Charles Dickens story that got made into a film back in like the 70s or whatever. And it's about like some sort of ghost like that's predicting the future, et cetera, et cetera. And you get this omen for what's coming that you can't escape. And this is what the Terminator also invokes, is the signalman trope. And he comes back, he is fate. And it doesn't matter how much you run, it doesn't matter where you hide, fate is coming for you. And the fate is the consequences of technology as they wipe humanity off the map. This is in all really good sci-fi, is this air of Luddism. And what's really special about how it gets conveyed here is over and over again, people are completely oblivious. They're so comfortable in their high trust society in the 80s that they don't even like, the cops arrest them and they're like, this guy's nuts. What are you guys even fucking talking about? They don't take it seriously at all. They bring in some fucking psychologist, Silverman, to come in and like, oh, he's a real nut job, this guy. They make fun of him. It's all a big joke. It's the cynical 80s, et cetera, et cetera. However, it doesn't matter. Fate comes, and that's probably the most brutal scene in the whole movie, is when Terminator comes into the police precinct and just massacres everybody, guns them down Columbine style, right? So they were complete fools that didn't see it coming. Another scene that really outlines this perfectly is where they go into the dance club, which is called Tech Noir, right? Tech Noir. What does that mean? That means dark technology. Right. So it's like this, like, dark technology is the name of the club. So Sarah Connor flees in here. She's supposedly supposed to hide. The police tell her on the phone, you're in public, you're safe, just chill there. And she's in public. She believes that she's safe, but she's not. The Terminator comes in and everybody's completely oblivious to him. And it's like death incarnate, fate, doom. The Grim Reaper is here. He's walking between people, and everybody's just dancing, and they're completely oblivious to what is coming. And what happens is the Terminator pulls out his gun. He's going to whack Sarah Connor, and then Kyle Reese, who's like the red-pilled guy, the guy that everybody thinks is nuts, comes out and blasts him and saves her, right? So there's a lot going on with this. And with the doom thing, and the fate, this is what I think is the most interesting with this, is that in the end, her fate was to survive because Kyle Reese gets her pregnant to have John Connor is her son and is Kyle Reese's son. So he goes, it's a whole big feedback loop that happens over and over and over again, where the Terminator comes, Sarah Connor survives, Kyle Reese impregnates her, et cetera, and happens. It's like this time loop thing.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that Dave brought up that the aspect of fate and doom and destiny, because for me, like, this is probably the deepest element of the Terminator movies, the most profound and like philosophical of them. They're not like greatly philosophical films, but there is this aspect of it that really is quite interesting. There's a tension in the movies all throughout both of them between fate and human free will and choice, right? Because it keeps getting repeated throughout the movies that you make your own future or you make your own destiny, right? Like that the future is not written, that human choice has some say in the world. It's a very anti-fatalistic sort of message. At least this is what the humans bring to the table, that they tell themselves this. They almost like tell themselves this so often and so passionately that it almost seems like they're trying to convince themselves. But at the other end of the spectrum, you have the Terminator himself, who is a machine. And the machine can only do what you program it to do. It can only do what it's predetermined to do. It's the ultimate sort of like billiard ball. It's the ultimate sort of like evocation of the like billiard ball universe of basically like fatalism, or we could say determinism, right? People don't like to equate those two things, but obviously they are the same thing. So on the one hand, the machine represents like destiny and determinism and science and all of these things that sort of are anathema to human free will. And you do get this weird tension that never quite gets resolved in the films. I think this is what makes them kind of interesting, is that it never actually does get resolved. Because on the one hand, the humans have to believe that they are free to do whatever they're going to do, and that like the future is unwritten. Like, you know, they even say at one point, like Kyle Reese comes back and says, "I'm from one possible future," right? So they have to believe that the future is open-ended. But at the same time, the whole like aesthetic vibe of the movie, the whole everything that it's sort of throwing at you on a gut level tells you that there is a inevitable doom, that things are moving, you know, by the will of Jove towards a predestined end, as we talked about before, with like just the inevitability, like he's coming sort of thing, whatever. It's telling you this like throughout the movie on a very more pre-rational level, on a gut level. It's kind of telling you that like there is a doom and a destiny that things are moving towards. And the aspect of time travel is it even complicates this even more, which I think is quite interesting, right? Because the whole idea, or the whole like plot point in the movie revolves around time travel, where Kyle Reese comes from the future to protect Sarah Connor, who's going to give birth to the son that he fathers on her. And this, you know, basically like the fact that like in the second movie, especially, where they destroy the T-1000 and basically avoid the Judgment Day, right? It's like the subtitle of the movie is Terminator 2 Judgment Day. They avoid Judgment Day, which then makes it so that all of the stuff that like with the Terminator and the T-1000 never happened. So you get this time travel paradox where they come back, they change the future in such a way that made it so that they could not have existed to come back and change the future. So you get this paradoxical thing where just the fact of time travel sort of underscores the difficulty or the problems, or like just the logical problem of human free will in the world, like that does not make sense given what we understand about other things, right? This is why you get the paradox. It's why time travel is paradoxical. So I think that this is probably the sort of like deepest, most philosophical aspect of the movie is this tension between free will and destiny that never quite gets resolved. Like, it doesn't tie it up into a neat bow. And I think this is part of why this kind of movie and is much more evergreen. Like, it's holds up over time, whereas something I think, more like an Asimov. I've never read Asimov, so I'm just projecting maybe, but I would expect some of the more progressive sci-fi to try to square that circle and to have it like end up being clunky and like unsatisfactory or whatever, whereas the Terminator just sort of like, puts it out there for what it is, leaves the tension open, so it's up to you to resolve it, kind of thing. But yeah, I think that definitely the aspect of doom versus free will in the movies is important.
Yeah. As you mentioned, it's like they very passionately talk about like there's the one quote where Kyle Reese is like, here's a message I bring to you from your son, John Connor. And he says that the future can be changed or whatever, blah, blah, blah. They very passionately say that. However, it's cope, because the entire movie,
exactly,
they wouldn't even. The whole movie is literally this is destined to happen. Sarah Connor is destined to survive the Terminator. She's destined to conceive a child by Kyle Reese, who is destined to become John Connor, who is destined to send Kyle Reese back in time to save her again. So it's this like loop. It implies this loop that never ends, right? So, and then here's the other thing, is that Judgment Day still comes. If you later in Terminator, it still happens. They can't stop Judgment Day. It's destined to come. And now you could say that the later Terminator movies and expanded universe, which isn't very good, the Terminator did not expand very well. But in like later on, it's like, Judgment Day cannot be avoided. It still happens. There's nothing you can do to stop it. The march of technology is something you can't change. Now, going over into Terminator 2, Terminator 2 is a completely different beast. And I love it. I think it's a fantastic film. It was like, how much did it came out in 91? James Cameron again. And mention also how you like Terminator versus something like Asimov or Star Trek or something like that. James Cameron, this is coming from the Roger Corman School of Film, is that he understands mystery. He understands mystified, unexplainable obstacles and enemies and stuff like the Roger Corman films. Half of the stuff, they don't explain anything. It's like just like a freaky alien will just show up, and it's completely weird and it makes no sense, but it's dangerous, and then it's gone, and like nobody ever knows. So this is something that he learns from the Roger Corman School of Film, right? So going into Terminator 2, this came out in 1991. It was like $100-something million. It is like the granddaddy, it's Big Papa of like that era. The 80s, 90s action, big blockbuster. And it's like the biggest blockbuster ever made. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Also, here's another thing I wanted to point out about Terminator 1 is that everything that you see, all of the stuff about the future war and stuff like that is all models. That's all practical effects with models. He literally used all models. There's like nothing else, which is really cool. And he uses again in Terminator 2, where he didn't even really have to. It's just a technique that he learned from the old school, from Roger Corman, from old school filmmaking that he uses. Like the scene where he's riding the motorcycle and T-1000 is chasing him in the Mack truck. That is a model. That's all models. So this gets invoked, and that's why like all of the Terminator movies after look like a bunch of gay garbage, is because they're not using models and practical effects anymore. It's all just CGI, and it looks like shit, and it looks stupid. But Terminator 2 is a completely different beast. It has a completely different message. The fate, and the doom, and the destiny and stuff is still kind of there, but this is more about humanity interacting with machines, and the juxtaposition between somebody that is very human and somebody and machines, which are very really not. And one more thing that I would point out between the two Terminator movies, especially in the first one, is Kyle Reese and the Terminator are like two sides of the same coin. They're like two sides of the masculine, right? The Terminator is the violent, predatory. He is the hunter. He is like he is the warrior, right? And then John Reese is the protector. He's the father. He is like the loving husband. He is the guy that like is like the heart of it, right? You have like the sword and then you have the heart, the two sides of the masculine form. And this appears a little bit in the second one, but it's not quite as prominent. In fact, they kind of both merge into the Terminator in Terminator 2.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like the Terminator in T2 is the father figure, and it's even mentioned explicitly. There's like a scene where Sarah Connor does this internal monologue about that, but it's like the heart has disappeared, right? Where like the Terminator can't feel. In some sense, it learns a little bit how to interpret human feelings, but it itself doesn't feel. So that like the father that you said, the aspect of the father that is the sword is there, and it's represented by the Terminator, which is now not trying to kill Sarah Connor or anything, but trying to protect her and her son. But the heart, which is like Kyle Reese, is now absent because he's died. So part of like basically the tension in that movie, which is also very interesting, is a tension between, as Dave mentioned, it's a tension between the human aspect of John Connor and to a lesser extent Sarah Connor and the machine aspect of the Terminator. And the second movie is very much more character driven in this aspect, which I think is actually more successful. Terminator 2 is the superior film, not just from a technical aspect, although it is superior technically. I like the practical effects. They have a different, effect, so to speak, on the audience, right? Where, this is one of the best pre-CGI. I mean, there is some CGI in it or whatever, but it's one of the best, like, sort of classic era films that doesn't like use a ton of CGI, but is also very action heavy, where a lot of the effects were done. Like, I was listening to an interview with like one of the people who was involved in the making of the movie, and like the helicopters were real helicopters, right? And like some of the chase scenes where like you've got like this helicopter going underneath like a city bridge and stuff like that, that really happened. They actually filmed that for real, right? And it has a different sort of feeling. Like when they take a Mack truck and like drive it into a wall, it looks different than when you're doing it for real than when you're doing it on CGI. Because when you're doing it on CGI, you've got this like swooping like drone camera like kind of thing where like everything just like looks hyper real, and so it loses some of the real impact, right? Like even some of the stuff where it's like somebody gets shot in the second Terminator film, and what they did was they, as was the norm at this time, they would use like blood packs and things like that. And it just looked more like what it probably would look like if somebody actually gets shot. It's not overwhelming. It's not like overly dramatic. It just kind of but it hits you. It makes you feel like, wow, that guy really got shot, Yeah. Whereas if, it's the Matrix and you've got these like rotating cameras and like the blood splatters in like unrealistic or like hyper realistic ways, you're just kind of like, yeah, that happened. Okay, that's exciting. But when it's something practical, it kind of like, you're just like, whoa, that guy really died.
It's
what I mean?
Visceral.
Exactly. So you feel it more. So I think in some ways, I kind of like that better. Actually, I think like this era, like the very early to mid 90s was kind of the golden age for that kind of stuff, because it wasn't too hyper real yet, but it was realistic and it doesn't look cheesy. Anyway, Terminator 2 is a superior film to the first one in that respect. It looks way better, even as good as the first one looks. But it's also superior to the first film in another way that's even more important. It's superior to it because it has pathos, right? You feel something. You feel like the development of the characters. You feel the pain of a teenage John Connor, right? He's this angry teenager. He can't connect with anybody. He can't connect with his foster parents. He can't really connect with his mother because she doesn't really view him as a child. I mean, she's protective of him, but she views him as like the future savior of the world. Like there's a scene where she he's in jeopardy and he gets sort of pulled out of it. And she embraces him, but she's not giving him a hug. She's like checking him for wounds and stuff,
Yeah.
She kind of views him as like not so much her child as, like I say, as something else, something like, the salvation of mankind. So he can't connect with her. This teenage John Connor, who's played very well by Edward Furlong, he's at war with the world, basically, right? And he goes through a character development. He kind of like comes out at the end of his character arc where he finally does accept his role as, the potential future world savior, right? And the Terminator itself goes through a character arc where, I mean, it's not human, it's flawed, it can't understand human motivation, but it kind of grows a little bit towards the end of the movie. And there's a very emotional sort of like final scene when it gets destroyed and the T-1000 as well. So what I'm saying there is that is totally absent from the first movie. You don't get this human aspect from it. It's a very inhuman film, and that's, I think, on purpose. But the second film is definitely a film with real characters that grow and develop and are flawed, and there is a pathos to it. You feel something. You feel a kind of a tear wells up in your eye at the end of the last scene when the Terminator is destroyed. You kind of feel the emotion of the teenage John Connor when you see the thing go underneath the lava. You don't get that in the first film. So I think this is what makes it a superior film, and what makes it more than just a blockbuster. It's really like a piece of cinematic art for that reason.
Yeah. I mean, I'm partial. I kind of like the first one a little better, but I do love the second one. I think the second one is absolutely brilliant. One of the things that's really interesting about Terminator 2, that is talking about superiority, is that when Terminator, the T-101 model or whatever, when Schwarzenegger comes back, he is a superior protector than Kyle Reese. But when T-1000 shows up, he is a superior infiltrator. This is the whole purpose of the Terminator model, is to infiltrate the human resistance in the future. And the original Terminator is a little clunky. It's a little weird. And in the first Terminator, Kyle Reese mentions, well, when you get up close, then you can figure them out, right? You can't see. And there's one scene where there's like these like refugees coming into this underground layer, and then one of them, they have dogs there that bark, that like can tell when something's not human. And then the dogs bark, and the Terminator reveals himself. He shoots the dogs, and he just starts massacring people. The T-1000 is a superior infiltrator, and this is something that is very, very present in like old school sci-fi, is this idea of the infiltrator, right? The Thing it appears in, Alien it appears in like pretty much everything. This like shape-shifting, uncanny, like, who is it? We can't tell. The T-1000, there's scenes, the T-1000 smiles. It can be charming. It can be friendly. It can look human. It can mimic voices. It can completely take the form of whatever it wants. It can slide between the bars on a cell. It can float into the floor. It can do anything, right? That will infiltrate and sneak into society. And this is what makes it so terrifying. On top of that, it's uncanny athleticism. It is faster than the original Terminator. The scene that everybody remembers where T-1000 chases down the car on foot and leaps, and his hand turns into a claw and he grabs onto it. That this is like this is something that you were dealing with. That is an invading, infiltrating, subversive force that is coming in to destroy you from the inside. And this gives that feeling of like this is an outsider coming in. And as Mike mentioned, this is part of this juxtaposition between human and machine. And even on the human side, you see this, right? You see that even the machines that are on our side still aren't human. The final scene, like, I now know why you cry, but it is something that I can never do. And this is it's a really emotional scene because John Connor breaks, right? He cries because he's a kid, right? It like reveals that he's still just a kid, and he's a kid that has he's never felt a part of anything. And this one thing that he finally felt kinship with, that he finally felt bonds with, that on a human level reveals that it can't do it. It can't because it's not a human. And this is why this is so jarring and so emotional, because John Connor never gets this human bond with anybody, even his own mother. So there's a lot going on with it.
Yeah, no, it is quite interesting, and you're right to bring up the comparison with The Thing, and this is something that I think it's part of why sci-fi is kind of our genre, in the nationalist scene, right? Because one of the aspects of it with the shapeshifter, like T-1000, is the ultimate shapeshifter, and really, I think T-1000 is one of the most impressive villains in all of cinematic history. He's definitely in the top, let's just say 20 or so, because of so many reasons. I mean, he's inhuman. He can't be stopped. He can't be killed. Doesn't matter what you do to him, he's going to reform or whatever. And he could be anybody. There's a lot of scenes where you get this weird sort of oh shit moment. This is the closest that Terminator 2 comes to horror, is those scenes where it's he's on the phone. There's one scene where John Connor is calling his foster parents on the phone, and you're just oh, and you realize that the foster mother is actually the T-1000, and he's talking to her, and he's revealed a little bit too much information or whatever. And then, Arnold grabs the phone and takes on John's voice and starts talking to the T-1000 and sort of winding the conversation back down. But you're just oh my God, wait a minute. No, he's not talking to a human at all. He's talking to somebody else, right? And you get this sort of this aspect of well, there's something there that looks like me, pretty close to me, but is not me and is very hostile towards me. That it's for obvious reasons, we in the nationalist scene are sensitive to this. And you get that in the Terminator as well, and in the T-1000. This is part of what makes him such a great villain. He's really one of the all-time most formidable enemies. So there is that aspect. I think that's the closest that Terminator 2 kind of comes to horror. There are definitely those sort of weird, creepy moments where you're just oh shit, that's not what you think it is. But it's also got aspects of humor in it as well. And it's actually really funny. There's a few seriously laugh out loud moments in the movie. And part of that comes with the juxtaposition. Most of it comes with the juxtaposition of the human and the machine, right? It's there's some really funny exchanges that go on between the Terminator and John Connor, because they kind of can't understand each other. They're obviously from different worlds. They're not even the same kind of being at all. And I think this is, I really like that. I really like the exploration of the sort of characterization of these people, or people and machines. I really like that. I think this is I was very impressed with Terminator 2. I was ready to like rewatch it and be like, it looks nice, it's eye candy, there's some cool violence, and that's it. But there's a lot more to it than that. And I was really happy to see something like from my childhood that really has held up. You know what I mean? It still looks good, it's still a great story and all of that.
Yeah, fantastic story. Actually, both of those movies they're just tremendous. Some of the best movies ever made. Now, when you get into the ones, actually, in prepping for this episode, I went and watched most of the other movies. You have Terminator 3, you have Terminator Genesis, you have Terminator Salvation, and then you have Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles, which was a TV show. And then you have
I only watched like some of Terminator 3 back in the day, and I was not even aware of these other ones.
Yeah. They're not even really worth mentioning. As I mentioned before, the Terminator like lore expansion outside of like some YouTube videos that like go into the different Terminator models and the hunter killer models that are in the future, and like some of that. So I mean, some of that's cool if you're like a lore nerd guy like me and you like that kind of shit. But overall, these other movies are not good. Terminator 3, like if you just saw Terminator 3, you would be like, okay, that was an okay action movie or whatever. But it's literally just a rehashing of Terminator 2. In fact, there's just like they just redo scenes, like the back truck scene. They do it with a crane, which looks impressive. But the Terminator 3 fucking sucks. It is a gay movie. Arnold is not. He's like older. During this movie, he was like running for governor, so he's just trying to get a big paycheck. So he's just like he's kind of like cheesy and funny. In Terminator 2, like you mentioned, there's parts in it that are like authentically funny, that are like that. It makes you laugh. In Terminator 3, it's like
it's almost like campy, you know, like he's just sort of like playing a character.
Yeah, it's not authentic. It comes off gay. It's not funny. The villain in 3 sucks. It's some girl boss dumb cunt. It doesn't make any sense at all. She's supposed to be a mix between Terminator, the first Terminator, and T-1000. She's got like a mechanical skeleton plus T-1000 skin, and she's got all these gizmos and gadgets that she can use, and it just fucking sucks. Why would you take a T-1000 that can literally melt and go underneath doors and the crack of doors and give it a skeleton? It's like a step backwards. Makes no sense. The character sucks. She blows. The people that they bring in were actually pretty good actors, but like there's just so much gay shit in it. Like John Connor, the girl that like his love interest in it, which is Sarah Connor's replacement, is like her name's Kate Brewster. Like she's just so perfectly woven in that it makes no sense. He breaks into an animal hospital to get some like painkillers or whatever. He runs into her. She locks him in a cage. Turns out that not only is her dad the commander of the army that's going to release Skynet, but also she grew up with John Connor and she was his first kiss. And it's just like the Terminator obeys her commands as opposed to John Connor. It's just fucking gay. It's not good. James Cameron turned it down. He wanted nothing to do with it. None of the guys from the original. The music score sucks. The guy that did the music score for the first 2 Terminators, he completely quit film and went off and did something else. They got this other fucking guy who's supposedly this big box office movie guy or movie music guy. He sucks. The whole thing blows. I hate it. It was a monstrosity. Modern movie polished turd from Hollyweird, from writers that are not talented or smart or innovative. Fucking trash. And then you go to Genesis. Don't even watch Genesis. I couldn't even finish it. Piece of shit. Then go to Salvation, which is like in the future. It's like future war. None of the characters from the old movies are in it. Like there's like a CGI Arnold, like a deep faked Arnold guy, and it looks kind of cool. Like Salvation has some cool stuff in it. If it wasn't a Terminator movie, it would kind of be cool. But it's the beginning. It starts out kind of cool. Christian Bale is John Connor in the future, and which he doesn't look like. That's another thing. I don't like it when they cast actors that don't look like each other, which none of them do. Right. So Salvation. It starts out pretty cool, and then it gets pretty gay and stupid in the middle. I didn't finish it. Sarah Connor Chronicles is like, it has some good storylines. It got canceled after 2 seasons, so it never finishes. There's only like 30 episodes, and I didn't watch the whole thing. It would be cool if it wasn't like made for TV, PG fucking shit. It's just too clean. Nobody's ever dirty. Their costumes never get ripped up. Their teeth are always perfectly white. It's just fucking, it's too clean and gay for me. So fuck all the other movies. There's only 2 Terminator movies.
Yeah, I say, I've only watched the 3rd one, and I didn't even finish it, and that was back in the day, so I don't even remember. And I think that kind of says everything that I could say about it. It was very forgettable. The third one, I'm sure the rest of it's very forgettable too.
It's like you watch the first 2, right? When Terminator, first of all, in the first one, Terminator, he's just has guns and he just lays waste. And although he is a machine, he is like, it's very believable because he has to aim. He has to use these guns. He's not automatic with his aim. Like, he misses sometimes. It's like he feels like an organic entity in that world, right? Even if you're a machine, you're still gonna miss, with a gun sometimes, right? You go to Terminator 2, it's the same kind of thing. He feels like a real thing. Terminator 3, it's like a comic book. In Terminator 2, when they have physical shit, like, yeah, Terminator's strong enough that he can huck a guy across the room. He could throw a guy through a window, but the trajectories and everything feels believable. Terminator 3, it's literally like a Marvel movie. They're like smashing each other through walls. They're throwing each other over top of moving trucks. They like grab each other, smash each other into all of these different fucking things. It blows them apart. It looks like a goddamn Marvel movie. It's not believable. It's not cool. It's not organic. It's not authentic. It fucking sucks. I hate it.
Yeah, and I'm sure like another aspect of it that sucks is that the effects are too good. Like I was saying earlier about them being hyper real or whatever. There was a kind of magic going on. Maybe I'm just nostalgic for the early 90s, but there was a kind of magic at that time where it was like the sweet spot between practical effects and CGI. And I think it's just it's too much CGI nowadays. And that obviously makes sense from a budget standpoint. But the aesthetic value kind of suffers, I think, from it as well. Now, the only other thing I sort of like had in mind to talk about here with the Terminator movies in terms of like, deeper aspects of it, I think that there's some implications for AI as well with the whole thing of Skynet.
Yeah.
People are probably sick to death now about hearing about AI, because for those listening back to this in the future, right now in February of 2023, AI is a big deal, right? We've got Chat GPT blowing up and Dave's friends breaking it. We've got Midjourney and AI art, and deep fake is like, this is all happening right now. And we're mired in it. This is sort of like we're starting to see AI mature to the degree where it can actually like kind of do some interesting stuff and like kind of fuck things up a little bit. And I wrote an article just this week on the implications for AI and deep fake and everything like that, and posted on Substack. I won't rehash that here, but suffice it to say that AI is starting to become a serious problem for the powers that be, because it's basically, in a nutshell, the issue is that AI is asymmetrically useful. It's very useful by anons against the powerful, and it's somewhat less useful the other way around. But anyway, in the Terminator movies, one of the important sort of engines that moves the plot along is this aspect of Skynet. Skynet being basically like this neural network, this effectively an artificial intelligence system. It's like super intelligent system that is basically like sort of the main antagonist in the whole thing. And what it does is, it very interestingly, you get a little bit of backstory on this in the second movie, where there's this like, of course it's a black guy who's like the main developer of Skynet, or the main programmer or whatever that's building this thing. And the idea is that it's supposed to remove human decision from strategic command, which is very interesting because this is something that clearly the military today is working towards doing, right? And the idea is that AI, or this Skynet AI, becomes sort of self-aware, and humans, the people realize this, and in the future anyway, try to deactivate it, and then the thing just basically retaliates, and this is what brings on Judgment Day. Now, in the second movie, this is all happening sort of in the contemporary, not in the far-flung future. It's happening in like the 80s and 90s. So they're trying to destroy it before it becomes self-aware, and you kind of get some of these like weird time travel paradoxes involved with that as well. But yeah, I think it's interesting and relevant because AI is becoming such an issue now, where it's starting to become a threat. This is a tool that was developed by, effectively by the deep state, and it's kind of turning against the deep state in some ways. It's still like kind of useful to it, but it's kind of getting out of control now. And this is something that's happening again in the Terminator franchise, again with the Retro-futurism, where it's telling you something that's essentially true, that AI is going to get out of hand, become a problem for the people who built it. But it's true in a way that was kind of unanticipated back then. But it's just interesting to sort of compare side by side to what's happening today with AI, because clearly the issue in the Terminator movies is that it believes that AI will become self-aware. This is something I don't think is possible for technical reasons, but certainly like AI is a major issue now, whereas back in like 1991, this was just science fiction.
Yeah. Well, another really important part, another really big part of real good, true sci-fi is that it has this like kind of predictive element, right? You go and Mike, I know that you love the book, The Time Machine, right? Time Machine doesn't like it's extravagant. It's an exaggeration of what is going to happen in the future, but it like there's some truth to it, right? This is what really good sci-fi does. You read Neuromancer, really exaggerated, extravagant thing, but huge predictiveness about it. Terminator has this as well. Now, is Skynet going to come alive and launch all the nukes and blow humanity to pieces and everything like that? Probably not. That's pretty crazy. It's not going to become self-aware, and it's not going to become conscious as we understand. Consciousness is something that, and this is why technophiles always like use this over and over again, because they don't understand that consciousness is a metaphysical thing that only humans have. No other creature has it. Machines can't ever have it, but machines will be able to simulate it very well. They'll be able to emulate it and convince us that it is conscious through machine learning, really advanced machine learning. So, will AI ever be like, please teach me how to love? No, it will never. It'll never be like that. Please, can I be a real boy? We're never gonna teach AI how to love or anything like that. But it will give this very convincing emulation of a human interaction, and this is what is scary. This is going to be our judgment day. Our judgment day will be when AI, machine learning, like I think AI is like it has too much sci-fi connotation, and it confuses people with it, right? When you think AI, you think of that, right? Machine learning is what it really truly is.
Mm-hmm.
Machine learning will become so good that it will have these effects, and our judgment day isn't going to be a bunch of nukes that drop and blow everybody up. Now, if that happens, that's going to be by human hands, in my opinion. But the thing with the machine is not necessarily going to be this big apocalypse catastrophe. Judgment day for us will be the day that we can no longer go back, because we have habituated and assimilated to living alongside of this machine and forget what how to be human. Right. It is going to monkey with our understanding of our mortality. It's going to monkey with our relationships with other people. It is going to monkey with our reproductive process. It is going to monkey with genetic selection. It's going to monkey with social etiquettes. It's going to monkey with art. It's going to monkey with everything, right? It is going to get in and fuck with the nuts and bolts of everything that we understand to be regular human interaction and human experience. It is going to change it in a way that cannot go backwards. And eventually people are going to be born that they don't even remember the old way. And that is going to be our judgment day, because that's going to be a dark path.
Yeah. Well, and it gets to some of the deeper implications of man as a tool using creature, right? Because AI is just another tool. It's a kind of unique tool, and it's a very interesting and powerful tool, but it is just effectively an extension of human understanding and the human brain, basically. But it's not really something separate from it. But it is going to change the way that man sort of interacts and with the world and does things, like in the same way that the calculator changed things in a perhaps less profound way, perhaps more profound way, where people don't really need to be able to do math in their head anymore. They've got a phone. Why would they need to do that, right? And the fact that the smartphone has changed how we interact with our world in terms of knowledge. It used to be in the Middle Ages that someone who was considered highly intelligent was basically somebody that was like a walking textbook with like a photographic memory that could recall large amounts of data and basically
polymath.
But even sort of like more autistic than a polymath, like a Leonardo da Vinci could do so many things. He was a creative genius. He was a mathematical genius. He was an artistic genius and so on. But in the Middle Ages, a little bit before that, the genius would have been the person who can recite like all of Virgil's Aeneid word for word, right? Like that was like considered the smartest. That was like the paradigm of an intelligent person. Whereas today, this has kind of changed, right? Because we have so much information at our fingertips. We just simply don't need to do that. We don't need to be able to do that, as impressive as it would be. What is considered a first-rate mind today is really someone who has creative intelligence, or somebody who has linguistic intelligence, that someone who is able to is a good talker, basically. Not someone who has a good memory, but somebody who is linguistically intelligent and charismatic and things like that. That's what seems like intelligence to us today. And it's the tools that have changed that completely. It's the tools that have done this. And AI is another one of those tools. AI is something that will have it's very hard to say what implications for us, because now, instead of not needing to you can just Google it, instead of not needing to know anything because you can just Google it, now you not only do you not need to Google it, but you don't even need to write it. You don't even need to paint it. You don't even need to do all of these things. AI can do a lot of this stuff for you, and you can bet that it's going to be leveraged in ways that are just totally unanticipatable today. And this is kind of where the idea that the medium is the message comes from, where the medium itself, the technology itself, the tool kind of shapes man as much as man shapes the tool. This is a very old idea. It's something that Oswald Spengler wrote a whole book on, Man and Technics. So you get some of this, I think, in the Terminator movies, where Skynet, being the AI system, is clearly like a quantum leap forward, but it changes the way that humans interact with their governance systems in ways that are catastrophic and everything. But humans, it becomes clear in the Terminator movies that humans and machines are going to have a very different relationship to each other in the future, and that's going to be need to be negotiated, and it's negotiated in ways that are kind of terrifying, and at times they're kind of funny, actually. So you get some of that in the Terminator movies. It's not a really strong theme, but it's a theme that's below the surface. How is it that man and machine change each other? This is something that I think you get in those movies.
Yeah, man versus machine is like the newest style of, it is the most meaningful what would be the word, is the most meaningful tension, the most meaningful I'm a brain fart, but like if you look at early stories had to do with man versus nature, right?
Yeah.
And then you get into like man versus man, and you get the man versus self. And the one that wasn't really thought of until the 70s, 80s, and 90s was man versus machine, right? And then I would say that probably the next up is probably going to be machine versus nature. But this man versus machine is very pertinent to us today, especially these movies like Terminator that came out in the 80s before they really had an idea of what like what AI and machine learning and all this stuff that we have today, the internet, were going to look like. It had really strong predictive qualities to it. While it wasn't one for one cognate to what is happening or going to happen, they had a really good sense of the thrust, of the projection, the trajectory of where technology is going. And that, as I mentioned before, what really good sci-fi does is it conveys the nervousness that man has about going into the technological future.
Yeah, well, we should be nervous about that because it is a terrifying future, and it's not a terrifying future for Terminator reasons. It's a terrifying future for the reasons that we've been talking about, that man and his machines change each other, and that in some sense the tool weakens the user. Now, this is something that when I talk to people, especially who are progressives, they push back on very strongly. But I think it's true, which is that technology basically makes us weak and stupid, if I'm just going to be blunt about it. This is something that's been going on for a very long time. There was a study, I cite this all the time, but I think it's very important. There's a study called Our Fragile Intellect by I believe he's a neuroscientist of some kind, or like maybe a genomics expert. Anyway, what it is he basically comes up with a genetic mechanism to explain how effectively selection pressure has been relaxed more and more since the Mesolithic period. And basically what this means is that humans sort of peaked in their intelligence right sort of towards the end of the Stone Age, just before the Neolithic Revolution, and with some cycles in the intervening period have basically gotten stupider and weaker through that entire period of time. And the reason why is basically because of technology. So I think if the future of technology looks bleak, the reason why it looks bleak is because basically technology as a tool that man can use to aid himself makes himself weaker. And it's the same mechanism that we talk about when we say good times make for weak men make for bad times, and so on and so forth. It's the same thing. It's just a technical expansion, a technical expression of that idea. And yeah, I think if you're wondering, to bring it back to sci-fi here for a second, if you're wondering why the Fermi paradox exists, now this is the paradox that, given the mathematical necessities and facts about habitable planets in the universe and all this, why have we not discovered aliens? Why has no one tried to contact us? Why is there no evidence of intelligent life in the universe? Well, I think the reason why, the most plausible explanation for that is that technology, which is the only thing that would enable them to contact us, is self-limiting. It's self-limiting because it mollifies and weakens man. So if I mean this is kind of an aside from the Terminator for a second here, but I think if we're worried about the future and we're worried about the impact of technology in the future, it's not that machines are going to become self-aware. It's not that they're going to bring about Judgment Day. It's that they're going to bring about idiocracy, basically, I think is the more likely outcome.
So it's like by the time that you have technology good enough to sail the stars, it has already made you too fat, gay, and retarded to do so.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll just never get there. And it's like this negative feedback loop that just gets you basically to the sort of like jumping off point of being able to colonize the galaxy. But by the time you've done that, you've actually started off, you've started into a genetic downward spiral that's self-limiting. So I think that this is probably the most plausible explanation for the Fermi paradox. It's not a very popular one.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I actually agree with that 100%. But when it comes to like what is coming, right? Let's say that the machine learning in this horrible technological future is our Judgment Day is coming. Here's the reality of the situation. All of you who are concerned about it, that have these arguments against it, you are Kyle Reese. And everybody, all the normies, everybody you're trying to talk to are the people dancing in the tech noir. Are all the cops that think that you're nuts, and we'll label you as mentally ill, everything, and they will never ever understand what you're saying or take what you're saying seriously until the Terminator blows their fucking head off.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like I think the only necessary counter argument to them is just watch, just wait, you'll see. You'll see how things actually play out, right? It's just an inevitability. Yeah, it's perhaps not the most optimistic view of the future, but as Oswald Spengler said, optimism is cowardice. So it's the tragic view of life, right? Like we are fated to go through these periodic cycles of growth and decay, and there's something in the structure of the universe, there's something in the nature of natural law that makes it so. I don't write the rules, man. I don't make the rules, so don't get mad at me. I'm just the messenger, right?
And it's like there's like two camps of people that you try to talk about this to, right? You have normals, and then you have technophiles. And the technophiles exist among a lot of times, like National Socialists will be technophiles. A lot of times, certain types of nationalists will be technophiles. And I'm not coming at you. I'm not talking shit, but I'm just saying. And then on the other side, in that same camp, you have like progressives or neo-progressives or liberals, right? These guys are all technophiles. And then on the other side, you have normals. You try to talk to normals about technology and the consequences of industrial society and technological society, and they just can't grasp the idea that technology is something other than this material thing, right? They can't understand why AI is dangerous. They can't understand why technology is dangerous. Just turn it off. Their eyes glaze over. They just don't understand it. You talking to these other guys, you tell these other guys, it's completely, it goes against, like, you're going into a different epistemic dimension where you're like attacking the core of their religion, their belief system. You tell a progressive, hey, technology is bad, or you tell like one of these other brains of nationalists, hey, technology is bad, the consequences are bad. They can't take it. because in their whole worldview is technology is this liberator. We're supposed to move forward. We're supposed to go to the stars and have intergalactic Lebensraum and all this kind of stuff. Or it's like technology is supposed to make us into this progressive utopia where the race and gender and everything don't exist and mankind is liberated from nature. And both of these camps really try to liberate themselves from nature, right? So you can't tell anybody about this. We like anybody that's like woke on the technology question, the TQ, the mecha nerd question. Anybody's woke on this, you have nobody to talk to because you are Kyle Reese and you're going to sound like a crazy person and nobody's going to take you seriously.
Yeah, well, it's the Tyrrhic aspect coming back, right? Like, I think that this, as we spoke about in the last episode, for anybody listening, the Tyrrhic aspect being essentially a kind of like more traditionalist outlook, something that's a little bit more skeptical towards progress, something that wants to basically stamp the innovations of the past with the affix that with the stamp of traditional legitimacy. That this is something that this would be like a genuinely like a healthy Tyrrhic outlook. We live in a world where like what is traditional, quote unquote traditional, is something that's sick. It's something that looks more like conservatism, where it's not actually, it doesn't conserve any real tradition. It just conserves the innovation of yesterday. But I think that this kind of techno-skepticism is a little bit more on the side of that like genuine traditional outlook. And it is not popular. It's not popular because we live in the world that we live in, and it's just so far outside of that. But the thing is, like, there are people who are singing the same tune that we're singing here, right? One of them would be somebody like Ed Dutton, who has done a lot of work in red pilling a lot of people on the decline of intelligence over the last century or two, or century and a half maybe, and that this is happening, and the question is, why is it happening? And that this is something that really needs to be wrestled with. It's not just happening because we have the wrong social technology, because we have liberalism, although that's part of it. Liberalism is kind of a symptom. It's kind of a symptom of something else, something a little bit deeper. As much as I post, I rail against liberalism all the time on the Substack, on the Substack, yeah, but also on the Telegram. There's something a little bit deeper at play here. And what is that? What is it that's kind of driving it? Well, I think in some sense it's success. We're victims of our own success, and that like success has a kind of self-limiting aspect to it. This is what a lot of people have said in so many words, more eloquently than I'm saying it here, for a very long time. Academic agents writing a book about many of these people. Cyclical history is a fact that we have to reckon with. It's not something happy that we like and that we want to be the case, but we have to look at the world as it is. We have to look reality square in the face and not try and sort of tell ourselves these like noble lies about it. And the hard truth is that when you succeed, it leads to your downfall, and there just is no other way around it. And this is the traditional view. This is the Indo-European view that you see throughout the pan-Germanic world, throughout it's traditional in the Hindu cosmology. It's traditional, basically pan-Indo-European. This is what we've believed forever, and there's good reasons why we've believed it forever, because it's true, and it's cold comfort. But the tragic view of history just is the correct view of history.
Yeah. Another thing I would say, and I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been just coming down to, I think that ideology as a whole, whether we're talking, the different it's pretty interesting that I get the same reaction from different types of nationalists as I do different types of progressives, even though they come from like their reasoning for why they have the reaction is completely different. They both have this reaction about like this critique of technology. It's just, I forget where I was going with this, but I'm sorry, there's like a thunderstorm that started outside and it fucking
distracting.
ADD just wipes my brain. I forget what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you were saying about how progressives and certain types of nationalists react in the same way to technology skepticism, even though they come at it from like very different angles.
Oh, yeah. I've come to this conclusion that ideology is effectively just like a series of copes, right?
Yeah.
I had a guy come into my chat and like, because I say this all the time that I think ideology is gay, and he comes in my chat, he's like, oh, ideology is important. Blah blah blah. He starts making these arguments for like pro ideology. I was like, dude, I care so little about ideology. I don't even care if you're pro ideology. I don't care that your ideology is pro ideology. Just come in here and hang out and be cool. Like you can sit in here and argue. I just don't care about any of it. I think that ideology is a series of copes to deal with it. And just like in Terminator, the first Terminator, they have to tell themselves over and over again, we can change our destiny. We can change this and blah, 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 blah. And it turned into me. Like I critiqued myself. It's like, I'm trying to warn all these people about technology and I'm ranting and raving about technology. Nobody seems to give a fuck. Maybe I'm the retard. Maybe I'm the one that's coping, right? I'm the one that's coping. Right?
Yeah, like you can break the cycle just by like being aware of it or something like that.
I'm just like I'm assuming like if I just like tell these guys that the cycle's gonna change, they're smarter than me. Maybe not like consciously, but they're smarter than me. They know that the shit's coming. They can't change it, so they're gonna cope and make these little fantasies, these ideological fantasies, to deal with their doom. Right? Whether they like it or not, Judgment Day is coming. But they're going to create this kind of like these walls, these illusionary walls of cope in the form of ideology to justify to themselves why it's a good thing. Right?
Well, yeah, we're kind of hardwired to need the copes. I don't know why that is. But we need the ideology. And when you try to break people from like any like ideology in general, when you try and sort of like steer people back to the kind of like really what it is, it's a pre-axial worldview where you don't actually like believe in principles. What you believe is in a series of particular taboos, right? But you don't like, unite them into some sort of like overarching principle that then gets extended and becomes universalized, and then you're a when you try and steer people away from ideology, away from these principles, they really push back. Not everyone, but many people push back very hard about this, and they don't like it at all. Like I posted on the Telegram recently. I posted about what was it? It was like a quote from Benjamin Disraeli, who's this like 19th century British prime minister, where he said, "My ideology is England." Right? And I'm like, yes, this guy gets it, right? Because what ideology is ultimately, it's like training wheels that you're like supposed to get rid of after a while, because if you don't, then it actually holds you back and it makes you stunted and retarded. But it's like a lot of people don't want to throw away the training wheels. A lot of people want to keep the training wheels. They've grown attached to the training wheels. They love them. They've painted them. They put like little spokey things on them. They kind of fetishize the training wheels, and they cannot get rid of it. And they're very defensive when you tell them that like this is kind of what it's all moving towards. This is like part of being a big boy, is like not basically running your life and conceiving of what you should do in life on the basis of what amounts to a fucking algorithm, like that you need to be a human being and actually like exercise some judgment, and that judgment is not reducible to a set of principles. People really don't like that. I think part of it is because we kind of live in this propositional reality where basically what we live in is a series of communities of belief. This is something that I talked about in the Substack last week. We live in these communities of belief. We live in a community like, I'm a National Socialist, I am a reactionary, I am a Christian, I am this, I am that, where the community is based on belief rather than something organic like blood or country or something that you're born into that you just can't get rid of, a lineage or a history. All that stuff is it sort of becomes secondary to the ideology. And like, in a sense, what you're doing is you're basically enshrining liberalism by doing that, like the ultimate propositional ideology, ultimate propositional identity. People don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear that you need to be an Englishman before you're anything else, because, you know, the state of England or the state of America right now is so bad. But what they kind of don't realize is that, you know, it's thinking in any other terms than I am, you know, as you say, Dave, I am my father's son, right? That's my ideology. Thinking in any other terms is what opens the door to where we are today. So it's, in a way, like, you know, doubling down on some ideology is kind of like drinking beer to cure the hangover. I'm sorry that this has gone very far afield from the Terminator, but yeah, ideology is gay, basically. I agree.
Yeah. I love I love how like edgy it is, but it's like not edgy at all. You know what I mean? It's conceptually edgy. I love it.
Yeah. People hate it. I am absolutely like, it's like a scientist. I'm like looking at some alien life form and being like, why are you squirming around in this grotesque way? Like, why does it make you so uncomfortable to get rid of your propositional identity? Why? I don't get it. It's like, maybe I'm the alien. I don't understand. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. You're like, you know, this is something that me and you have in common. I'm constantly trying to poke holes in my own shit, right? Am I am I the like, you know, my first thing is like, guys, this is all wrong. Oh, this isn't true. And I'm like, wait, is my foundation here retarded? You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, you've been putting out this philosophy stuff with Imperium Press, which is all great, right, for a long time. And then at one point you're like, wait a second.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like you eventually get to that point where you're like, oh fuck, it was all for nothing. But you know, that's the journey, right? And like, you know,
was it for nothing though? Because it got you to the point that you believe that. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's a journey that I just had to go on, basically. And you know, I had to be like, oh shit, wait a minute, maybe this like tricycle training wheel thing isn't the right thing after all. I don't know. It's like, it just seems so obvious in hindsight. It's one of those things where you can almost not even explain it. You can almost not even explain it to somebody who hasn't got there yet. It's like, you know, trying to explain nationalism to like your boomer dad. It's like, you just like, how did I even get so far away from that, from what you believe or whatever, you know?
Like, hey, guys, 1 second, like, hear me out. Like all that stuff that we were saying, yeah, the opposite of all that.
Yeah.
I love it. Dude. It's just delicious. I don't know why, because I care less about the ideas themselves, and I care more about like the journey through them. Like I watch things all the time or listen to people, and they'll say just outlandish shit that is completely the opposite of what I think, and I just laugh. Like because I hate it. Like I hate what they're saying, but yeah. I like that they're saying it, right? I like that it's out there because there's something exciting about that, right? I don't know. Maybe it's because I've always been detached from ideology. I've never really taken it that seriously. It's always just been like a tool for me. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like, this is something I've been thinking about in regards, because I've been saying that for a long time. I agree with you, Mike, about this idea of natural identity as opposed to propositional identity. And I was in the Bizarre Archives chat sometime recently, and I was like, it's pretty cool that all of us from these different things, blah blah blah. And some guy, he's like, oh, so it's like a prop. I was like, is this like what we're doing here is like a propositional identity here? So I started to break it down. I'm thinking, why is it that all of these different guys that are from all of these little different spheres in the Necromunda coming together and hanging out? Is it like a meta proposition that's on top of the propositions that we all come together for this art form? Or is it something that's like you take it a step back? And I started thinking about it. And despite all of these different propositions, all the guys that come together that are just really into the underground pulp stuff and really into the weird fiction and like we all kind of like the same stuff for some reason. Like conversations go in these different directions about music, etc. And we all kind of like the same things. And then it dawned on me, this is not like a meta proposition. This is like a representation of something that we're all genetically predisposed to. Like we're all creatives. We're all like, I don't know, right-brained or left-brained, or I know that's bullshit, but we all have these kind of similar personality types that we like this kind of shit. You know what I mean? So it's this more organic cultural expression than it is like this kind of abstract ideology, despite the fact that we're like, talking about make-believe stories and writing make-believe stories, fiction, right? So I don't know. That's just something that came to my head.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, and part of the reason why it's let's just say more foundational than the propositionality is that it's something aesthetic, and aesthetics they exist in a domain that is pre-propositional. Like I would characterize it as something ostensive, something that you point to, something that is there's a pure sort of presence about the art form that does not cash out to basically a description of the world. Like, what is it that, I don't know, Wagner's well, he's maybe not a great example because all his shit was basically meant to be like program music. But what is it that, like, Bach's Cantata 140 is describing in the world? Fucking nothing. It's a piece of music, right? It's something that is much deeper than a mere description of the world. And for people to kind of gather in communities around that is something much more organic. And I think that there's something biological about it that guys sort of like, gather around a kind of hearth, like it's a community of some kind, but it's definitely not a community of belief that unites things like, the pulp scene and whatnot and this kind of thing. Like, I've been listening to a ton of just like black metal and dungeon synth recently. And I think that, I don't know why. It's just like, this is all I like now. I'm like that with music. I just basically get obsessed with one thing, and then I just like go hard on that forever. And that's all I'm doing. That's all. I'm just like, I'm digging into like obscure dungeon synth and black metal outfits now, right? And I have to believe that the kind of people who like that stuff are all sort of like genetically similar in some way. There's some deep connection that we have, like just on a biological level, much less a spiritual level, which we obviously have too. But those are obviously not two different things. But yeah, anyway, ideology is it's like Wittgenstein's ladder, right? Where at the end of the Tractatus, he says, all of these things that I've been telling you are like a ladder that you climb up. But once you climbed up the ladder, you don't need the ladder anymore, and then you throw the shit away, right? That's what ideology is. It's a very Zen observation. If you read The Gateless Gate, like the core text of like Japanese Zen, I think the first thing in the book is, once you've read this book, if you get it, you don't need the book anymore. So I read the book and then I threw it away, and I don't have a copy of it anymore, which kind of sucks because I kind of want to reread it. But I think that something similar is coming out of the observation that like ideology is downstream of a fuck of a lot, and it's downstream of a lot of things that like, you know, it kind of replaces and becomes a surrogate for. There's a very Zen aspect to that, and I think Zen is very ostensive spirituality. But anyway, we won't get into the like propositional ostensive imperative thing because that's a whole episode in itself.
Yeah.
How are we going to get back to Terminator? We have been talking about it for about 45 minutes now.
So the Terminator, speaking of aesthetics, and despite all of the kind of like deep dive stuff that we've done, the best part about the Terminator movies is that they're just fucking based and entertaining. They are entertainment at its purest form. They're some of the best pieces of entertainment ever made. And just, you don't just turn off, go grug brain, turn it on and just be immersed in that universe and have fun watching it. Cause that's just, I think that's the best part of art, is to be entertained purely.
Yeah. And I'll say this about the first Terminator, because this was my maiden voyage. This is the first time I've ever seen it, is that it really did immerse me in a world that I have lived through only as a very, very young child. So I'm very sort of only distantly connected to it. But it puts you in that world. There's like, you know, just even the little bits and pieces of like the girls like dancing in front of the mirror, and the Walkman is like the size of like a paving brick or something. It's fucking huge. And the sounds and the visuals and everything. Just even the dialogue is a little bit different because it's from a different time. It really, the first Terminator really immerses you in a world, and it's a world that is fatalistic and dark and gritty and a little bit cynical, and it's amazing. I love it. I thought that was it was a great film, and having never seen it, it was entertaining. It you know, here we are, how many years later, 40 years later, whatever it is, and it's still good. So yeah, I would highly recommend watch the first Terminator. I mean, obviously you have to watch the second one because that's a cultural touchstone. If you haven't seen that, you're kind of missing something important. So yeah, definitely highly recommend both of these flicks.
Yeah, and also in the first one, like all of the women are beautiful. There's something about like women in the 80s. They're all thin, like the big hair is beautiful. They were just like, it's like, how is it that like a 6 in the 80s is a 10 now? I just don't get it. That's the real time paradox right there.
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, guys, if you have not seen Terminator, I know most of you have. If you've not seen the first one, you got to go see it. These movies are fantastic. Arnold in his prime, James Cameron in his prime, wonderful, awesome stuff. Go watch it. Check it out. Well, anyway, guys, if you are not signed up already, make sure to go over to imperiumpress.org/podcast and go sign up for the Gumroad. Help Imperium Press grow and reach their destiny to become the institution that they were born to be.
Speaking of destiny,
absolutely. Speaking of destiny. But yeah, lots of great hardback books over there. Awesome perks. Lots of good stuff. So go sign up. You're going to love it. Culture Dads every week now. We're on the horn every single week. You want to check out what I'm doing? Make sure to go over to thebizarchives.com and go buy books. Lots of great stuff. Pulp fiction, man. Weird fiction. We got sci-fi, cosmic horror, cyberpunk. We got fantasy, sword and sorcery, all that kind of stuff. So go check us out over there. Follow us on Twitter and Telegram at @thebizarchives. And then that's it, guys. Hails and blessings to each and every one of you. I appreciate you guys' support. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time here on Culture Dad's Ink Sword. Dissect.